Hey everyone, today I have with me John Ruhlin. He is the gifting guy. He's the author of Giftology, a speaker and founder of Ruhlin Group, where he consults companies on how to level up their gifting. Wow, welcome to the show, John.
Hey, thanks for having me, Amanda. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, so I want to tell you guys, I first met John at the Passion Summit where we were both speaking, and John's talk just really captivated me and everyone else there because he's so passionate about gifting and he has turned it into his career. And so I'm so excited for him to share this story. But John, I want to take you all the way back to when you were first getting started, like before you were the gifting guy. How did you imagine your career path being?
Yeah, well, like a lot of things, they definitely didn't unfold the way I expected by any stretch of the imagination. When you're desperate, it's amazing the doors that open or the things that you do. I grew up a farm boy milking goats every morning, one of 6 kids on a 47-acre farm. And I hated blue collar work. Like we had a 1-acre garden. We heated our house with wood. It was just miserable. And so I wanted to get out of Dodge. And I was hopeful that I could maybe go become a doctor and like do more like white collar things. And so I get straight A's all through school. I'm kind of an overachiever. And I was going to go to med school. And to pay for med school is expensive. I didn't want to get into a bunch of debt. I was looking for a way to pay for school. And so I go and intern with Cutco, the knife company. So a lot of people have sold Cutco. I had no idea what it was. But a buddy of mine who was like, couldn't sell water to somebody in the middle of the desert was selling these knives and doing well. And I'm like, if Steve can do it, I can at least try for like a summer. And so I go in, like, I remember my mom saying, like, John, like, none of our friends can afford these knives. Are you dumb? Like, this is crazy. And she literally, like, my mom's pretty positive, but she was like, these are expensive. And I'm like, Mom, that's not the pep talk I'm really going for here. And so I go in, pour myself 100% into it. I'm like, I'll commit for 6 weeks. I'll do everything I can for 6 weeks. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And my 4th appointment changed my life forever. And it's for my girlfriend's dad, who is this uber successful attorney, but he also owned real estate and oil wells and banks. And he was radically generous. Like he would find deals on noodles and like literally like the next Sunday, like 200 people at church would end up with like a year's supply of noodles. And I'm like, Paul, that was like 30 grand. He's like, I know, but look at their smiles. So I'm hoping that Paul will order pocket knives for all of his clients who are like CEOs of insurance and wealth management firms and construction companies. And he changed my life forever. He's like, John, I don't want to order pocket knives. I want to order paring knives. I'm like, Paul, like a kitchen tool for a bunch of CEOs? Why? And he said, John, in 40 years in business, the reason I have more referrals and deal flow and access, I found out one simple truth, and that's if you take care of the family in business, everything else takes care of itself. So at that moment, I realized it really wasn't about the knife for Paul. To this day, like we still sell millions of dollars in knives as gifts. They're not really gifts, they're artifacts. We call them artifacts because we realized that they were a representation of the value somebody placed on the relationship. You can include somebody's family and do something cool for their spouse, their husband, their wife, their kids, their pets. The relationships flourish. So I decided after modeling this best practice, I became Cutco's #1 distributor in the history of the company. And not because I'm a good sales rep, I'm not. I'm actually an introvert. And they'd ask me to speak on stage and I'd have like diarrhea for like 6 months leading up to speaking engagement because I was so nervous. But I realized that when I gave somebody a gift, they would have to respond to me, whether it was an open door, whether it was, a deal or whatever it was. Like being an introvert, gifting gave me like this language to use to be able to communicate value and open doors and get access to people.
Yeah, anyone that's received a gift knows that you have to say thank you. You can't just get the gift and be like, yep, I'm just going to throw that away,
Yeah, especially when it's a nice gift and it's personalized and it follows all these different principles. If you send somebody like a polo shirt with a big logo on it, maybe you don't respond. But if somebody sends you a gift, for your dog, Frankie, you're probably going to respond. And so but I learned that. So I ended up starting an agency that started working with companies from $1 million to the Chicago Cubs and everywhere in between, helping them outsource their gifting, and not like with swag and trinkets and stuff, but really thoughtful, really over the top, really unique gifts. So we worked with Google, and over the last 19 years, we've been doing this, but it started with this crazy idea in college to pay for med school and has evolved a lot over the last 19 years.
Well, so how did I'm just kind of going back to this, like you're very young in this moment and you have this realization about the potential of gifting and what it's able to do for your sales career and possibly be a future business. You know, how did you break the news to family when they're like, hey, you're on this track to med school, what's going on? You know?
Yeah. So it was an evolution. Like the first summer, I was just trying to get through the summer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it wasn't like I did it and it was like, oh, here's the perfect path of the next 19 years. Like there's been times I've thought about shutting the business down and quitting and whatever else. Like, and even in that time, I was like, I'll give it a summer. And then after summer, I'm like, I'll finish out the year. And then after that, I was like, you know what? I could do this the rest of my college career. But I still had med school on the back of my mind. But I was like, I might as well learn as much as I possibly can. And what's cool is if I don't go to med school, you know, Cutco has this amazing training program, personal development. Like they're the best sales training and personal development company for college kids on the planet, in my opinion. There were like 60,000 college kids a year. So I'm like, I'll at least go out every time I had a meeting or an appointment at somebody's house. It was with a business owner, oftentimes, or somebody affluent. So I'm building out my network. So even if I don't sell knives the rest of my life or I don't do gifting, I have like 1,000 people that are in my corner that like me, trust me, that bought, you know, thousands of dollars a knife. And I have this deep relationship with that. Most people graduate college and maybe they have some professors or, you know, family, but I had this huge network that was growing as a direct result. So I started to realize that there were other ancillary benefits to what I was doing, that even if my path went a different direction, like I didn't realize I'd write a book. I hated speaking, and I do both of those things now. And so I didn't really know what doors were going to open or whatever else, but I tried to maximize. I've always thought, like in business or in life, I've always been able to see the angle and said, you know what, knives sound really weird to go do, but look at all of these ancillary things that can come with it. And so I focused on those, and then I just planned a year at a time and would say, I don't know if I'm going to do this for forever, but right now I'm graduating college debt free and I'm learning all of these skills and building the network. That's pretty cool.
I love that. So you have the side hustle and it's intentionally opening these other doors for you. I think so often we think, okay, I just need something that's going to make me money, right? I just need a job. But could you be more intentional about what it is that is your side hustle or your part-time job, where for you, it was opening up your network to people that you saw yourself connecting with in your future career. So I think this works for any industry. If you want to start building up your expertise, but you need to make money. And at first, you know, could you be making money and doing a part-time, you know, very easy administrative job, but in that industry where you can then make connections, right? So let's say if you did decide you wanted to go in the medical field, right? And so could you be a scribe for a doctor, for example? And now before you know it, you know all these other pediatricians. And now you're like, I can see what their world is like. It sounds like the connections that you were making were opening your eyes to this other world. And that was very attractive to you. And it was something that you didn't even know would be attractive.
I didn't know existed. No, I think a lot of times, well, you see people now, like you see Gary Vaynerchuk and different people say, instead of, you know, just, you know, college is great, but why don't you go like work for free, you know, for somebody for 3 months and you learn the craft, you build the relationships. And so for me, anytime you can get paid to build out your network or paid to get a skill, like I wasn't, you know, everything in my opinion now, like my girls will also go sell Cutco because everything is selling. If you're a teacher, you're selling the, you know, education is important to a you know, an 8-year-old. If you're a pastor, you're selling the importance of Jesus. If you're a, you know, like an engineer, you're selling your ideas to your boss to take your project or your specific ideas. Like what I realized is almost everything is sales. Like if you're going to get married, you're going to sell yourself to your spouse. Like everything is selling. And so for me, it was like, this is a skill I'm going to need no matter what I do. And if I can make money doing it and I can build out my network. And so I think anytime you can double dip or triple dip and get exposed to something that maybe, you know, is a weakness and shore that up or take you into an area where you normally feel uncomfortable. Like to me, I think that we grow the most when we're put in situations where we're forced to grow because we're uncomfortable. And for me, I've always leaned into things that I was uncomfortable. And because of that, oftentimes amazing things have happened.
Well, also the job becomes the excuse for why you have to connect with this like high level person. Like for me, the podcast is an excuse to get to interview people that I might think, I might be nervous to ask to just have 15 minutes of their time. I don't always get nervous now at this point in my business, but there's people that I'm super inspired by that, authors or, even you, that it's just like, I saw you on stage and I was blown away by your story and, definitely felt a little nervous, but the podcast gave me that excuse to say, hey, can I get a bit of your time? And I want to hear your story. And the podcast became that excuse and that platform for it. So if you can find,
podcasting is so powerful.
If you can find any kind of platform like that or any kind of opportunity that can become the excuse for why you can get your foot in the door a little bit more, whether that's blogging or working for someone in that industry in some way, or like you said, working for free, shadowing someone, volunteering, being a docent at a theater because you want to start making building your network in the theater world.
Putting yourself out there is always a good thing. I mean, that's just the bottom line. The more you put yourself out there, put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And if you can do it on a platform, even better. I mean, it's one thing to say, if I kind of pick your brain, which I hate that word or that phrase, basically means I want your time for free and don't want anything in return. But if you say, hey, I have a show that I want you to be on, now there's a value proposition. And so a lot of times it's the same thing, but it's how you're positioning it and figuring out ways that you can add value to the other person. The more you do that, and think about the other person's time respectfully, the better things get. And so you're super smart in the way you're building your business. I love it.
Oh, thanks. Well, so, I mean, it's kind of like the dating thing that you said too, like that first date's super uncomfortable, right? Getting that first talk. Like, so for me, having the podcast, like we're on the first date, like after this, it's going to be a lot easier for us to connect. And so when you work for someone, everybody knows that first day on the job, it's super nerve wracking and like to ask your boss questions or to like even just find your way around the office. And I'm sure your first days at Cutco were confusing and there were things that were over your head at first. And then you figure it out and you get more comfortable, just like dating. And before you know it, you're sitting on a couch with your coworkers watching football as you would with your partner, right? So you just have to get past that and get comfortable. All right, well, we're going on a tangent here because I want to hear about a day in your life as the gifting guy, as the author of Giftology, as a speaker and founder of Ruhlin Group. What does a day in your life look like? Like for listeners out there, like, I get that he's this gifting guy. I get that he has this business, but like, what does he do? Like, can you break it down? Like, what does it look like to be you? What was your yesterday like?
Yeah, so a lot of my time now is spent, I'll do 4 interviews today. So a lot of it is media. A lot of it is writing, a lot of it is casting vision for my team. But early on, it was selling. Like I was networking, I was connecting, I was building relationships. At a core level, the problem that our business solves, it's not really a gifting problem. Most people aren't waking up thinking, I have a gifting problem. So most of the time, it's positioning and for people to understand that if your clients and your employees aren't actively sending you referrals, then you have a loyalty problem. And so I think in 2019, everybody's so overwhelmed with noise and digital and all this other stuff. And everybody says relationships matter. And so really the core level of what I go speak on, teach on, and have conversations with people about is if you say your relationships matter and you have $1 million customer and you send them a bar of chocolate with your logo on it, you basically just told them you spent money to tell them that they didn't matter. And so at a core level, we're a loyalty company. We help companies, whether they're $1 million company or $1 billion company, love on the relationship. So I'm having conversations with CEOs where I'm leaning into them and saying, hey, instead of spending $3 million on marketing with Facebook ads and billboards and conferences and trade shows and all the other crap that all your other competitors do, what if you started to love on your 100 employees differently? What if you started to love on your 1,000 customers differently? Not sending them swag and crap with your logo on it, but actually sent them things that would make them cry or that would inspire them to really be what I would call a salesperson for you. People will say, John, like, what do you really do for companies? I'm like, I help people inspire all of their relationships to become salespeople for them. And so those are the sorts of things. So I'm still involved in the sales and the strategy process where I'll say, hey, if you're going to spend $3 million on marketing, what if we took 10% of that, $300,000, and let's take care of your top 500 people and let's do it this way. This is the gift it would be. This is the series. This is the handwritten note. This is the recipe. And then, and so a lot of mine is still casting vision and sales. And then I'm supporting my team because they're coming back to me and saying, John, we got this customer. This is what's the challenge. They got 50 employees. They got 500 customers. What do we do? And so sometimes like the Cubs will come to us with crazy projects. We're ripping apart Wrigley Field. We don't know what to do with the wood. Can you figure out a gift to build from the wood? And so those are the really fun projects where we're dealing with artifacts.
That's super fun. Wait, what did you do with the wood? I want to know.
Yeah, so they came. So I called on them. I sent them gifts for like 6 years. The pro sports teams, most people throw all kinds of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars at them just to get their business. And I've always said I won't sell to them unless there's a profit. And so they came to us and said, after 6 years of sending them gifts, like, John, we're ripping apart the wood. We don't know what to do with it. And we're thinking of building a plaque. We're going to throw the wood away. It's falling apart. It's a 100-year-old iconic structure. And so I said, on the spot, I just had this epiphany. I'm like, what if you made Bluetooth speakers made from this 100-year-old wood? It'd be like an artifact, history, but it'd also have a tangible, real purpose. So it'd be a purposeful artifact. And they're like, yeah, that's amazing. Go do that. And so I went to a couple speaker companies, and they're like, that's the worst idea ever. The wood's falling apart. We can never make a speaker from that. And I'm like, well, that's funny. I told the Cubs we could, so we got to figure this out. So I ended up having to go to a company in-house, and we had to re-glue the wood together and reroute it out, and it was numbered 1 through 500 for the Cubs. And even the Ricketts family are billionaires. They're like, the coolest thing ever. So we've done 3 projects for them, all iconic like that, where we're taking a piece of history or an artifact and building it into the gifts, and then helping them source it, build it, customize it, and then send it out to their 500 support relationship.
That's so cool. I mean, when I heard you speak, it really had me thinking about the kinds of gifts I give. I personally am a big, I like to put a lot of thought into my gifts. I like to give gifts that, what was interesting what you said was it's not about you in the gift, but I do like to give gifts that I would like too, so I can vouch for it. I'm like, that's a good gift because I know I'd want it too. But I think you really did open my mind to the elements of what makes a great gift. And for other people that are out there like me that are like, maybe they don't run a company and it's not gifting for their clients, but maybe it is gifting for their network or thanking a mentor. So if you're a student listening to this and you're like, this mentor's really helped me open up doors and get an internship, and I want to thank them and let them know I value our relationship. What are some elements of gifting that you could help guide them? Because, I run College Magazine. We've got tons of gifting articles and they get tons of listeners, readers. And people want to know, but I think that you really touched on some of these elements, some of these things to think about that I had never heard before. So I'd love for our listeners to hear some of those insider secrets, if you're willing to share.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm an open book. I mean, we poured everything we had into the Giftology book. There's no Giftology 2 coming out anytime soon. But yeah, I think a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm a student, I'm an assistant, I'm an entry-level sales rep. I can't apply this. And I'm like, do you have anybody in your life that matters? Maybe it's your parents. Maybe it's, like you said, a professor, a mentor. An hour of their time is probably worth hundreds, if not thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars an hour. And if they opened a door for you, or if they supported you, or were in your corner, like, what's the value of that relationship? Not only now, but how can you build the relationship for the long term, so that 20 years from now, they're still in your corner? And that's where I think people say they play the long game, but most people's long game is like 6 days, not 6 years or 16 years. It drives me crazy. But a couple things. One is, it's not about the money. Although I will say, if I'm going to do something for somebody, let's say it's a more affluent, like, professor or an affluent executive. If I try to buy them a watch and they have a Rolex and I give them a really nice Fossil watch that I spent $200 on, like, they're going to say thank you, but it's going to get regifted or forgotten about. Like, they're not going to take their $10,000 watch off and put your $200 watch on. So I say best in class in whatever category. So I would go spend $75 on a luggage tag that was custom made for them and their family and their spouse. It was like this beautiful thing. Most luggage tags cost like 75 cents. This one costs $75 and it's personalized to them. And if they travel, they're probably going to use it. So it's not spending the most money. It's finding a thing that I call it a practical luxury, something that they would use, but they would never buy for themselves. And the personalization is big. Most people are like, oh, I'll just give them a gift card. Well, a gift card basically says you weren't important enough to go think of a gift and go buy it for me. So here, go buy your own gifts.
I hate the gift card. I've always hated the gift card because I feel like it's a throwaway. I feel like, and we often forget to use them too. Like, how many times do you leave a place and you're like kicking yourself? You're like, oh, I forgot my Nordstrom gift card. Yeah. Gift cards are, I have a top 10 list of the worst gifts to give to people, and gift cards are on there. Food is on there. Alcohol is on there. Anything that's I'm so sorry to anyone that's ever gotten me a gift card. Thank you so much for the gift card. It's just that I have trouble giving them. Because if the goal is to deepen the relationship and create an emotional deep connection, having somebody go pick out their own gift does not do that.
Giving them a piece of plastic doesn't do that. Like, if you think about it, like, the relationship, the things that matter to you, like I had one of my friends who's a big speaker, who was an attorney, tells a story of like, he was an attorney and the patriarch passed away and 3 kids blew through $5 million fighting over one item. This is a true story. And I was like, was it art? What was it? And he's like, nope, it was a $20 item. I'm like, shut up. Nobody spent $5 million fighting over a $20 item. He's like, I saw it firsthand. And he's like, here's why I love your stupid knives. They're artifacts of the relationship, just like they were for this guy. Every day for 40 years, this father played the harmonica after dinner. And when he passed away, the girls, there's 3 daughters, they all wanted the harmonica, and because when they thought of their dad, they thought of the harmonica. And the harmonica was a representation of who their dad was and the family, and every memory tied back to the harmonica. So they could go buy another $20 harmonica, but it wasn't the same as the one that her dad had because of those relationships. He's like, if you can give somebody something and personalize it, make it a part of who they are, and weave it into their life, it's like the $20 harmonica that they, someday it'll be an artifact. So if you think about if your house was on fire, you're going to grab a handful of things. It's usually not necessarily the most expensive things. It's the irreplaceable things. So it might be the harmonica, it might be pictures, it might be the flag that your dad served in the military. It's things that aren't necessarily the most expensive, pricey, fancy, but there's meaning tied to them. And so when I work with people and people are like, John, what's the hot new gift? I'm like, I still do millions of dollars into stupid knives. And people are like, really? Like the New York Times asked us, like I was joking. And I said, here's why. Most people break bread together with their family in their house. And whether it's a bar mitzvah, whether it's a first communion, whether it's Christmas, Easter, every celebration is in the family, in the kitchen, breaking bread. And the knives become woven into the family just the same way that the harmonica was.
Yeah, knives, silverware gets handed down too.
So yeah, it's an heirloom. And so anytime you can weave into it and personalize it, and then I won't let people send out gifts through our agency or in general unless they'll put a handwritten note with it, because the handwritten note provides context to why you're sending it and why it's meaningful. And so people are like, oh, I want to automate the gifts and have typed notes go out. And I'm like, if you're not willing to let us or you handwrite the notes to go with it, you can't hire our agency. And they're like, shut up. Like, are you serious? You're like, you're that serious about it? I'm like, I'm not serious about it, because the handwritten note is what sometimes is more valuable than the item itself that you're sending. That's what provides the meaning. And oftentimes people are like, I don't have money for fancy gifts. I'm like, great, don't do any gifts. Don't do any gift cards. Just take an hour and write the nicest note on the planet.
Can I tell you what is on my desk right now? It's of course, obviously this podcast equipment, but it's a handwritten note from a recent employee that wrote me this beautiful handwritten note, and a painted, handcrafted mug from my best friend from high school's mom that she made. I mean, they're artifacts. You're totally right. Like, that's what's on my desk that I see every day.
That subconscious trigger of the relationship. I mean, people say, how did you get the referral? How did you get the open door at the company? You have to be liked and trusted. They have to like you. You have to be trustworthy. But top of mind is huge. And most people aren't top of mind because everybody's so overstimulated. But you send something to somebody that becomes something that they see every single day, you become unforgettable. And you get the extra phone call. You get the phone call back. You get the referral, the open door, the whatever. And so it's not spending the most money. It's winning based upon that subconscious trigger. And oftentimes, if it can be tangible, whether it's handwritten or whether it's the mug. I mean, we partnered with this artist recently. I used to make fun of mugs, the corporate coffee mugs being the worst gift on the planet because they're like cheap from China and they're a company logo on them. They're the worst.
As you can tell, I love my mugs. This one's actually just from my recent Greece trip, and it was a handmade mug. And I'm like, I love it. And I always have my coffee when I'm on the podcast. So
yeah. So I have an artist that we do these. We just did one for Richard Branson. They're $1,000 mugs, which people, not everybody can afford a $1,000 mug, but in the business world, depending upon where you're at, people will spend $1,000 on a bar tab or a dinner. They'll spend $100,000 on a trade show and get nothing from it. And I've seen billionaires cry from these mugs because they're handcrafted. They're carved into the mug is like the person's why, their family, their faith, their values, who believed in them first. And I've seen people say, John, this mug, I give out 3 or 4 a week. And I've had mentors say, John, this is more valuable than my $50,000 watch. And it's because of what it represents. It's the tie-in to what they care about. It's
And I
not
like that
spending
it's
enough money.
also functional. So it's like that functional artifact that you said. That's really cool.
Yeah, people don't need more stuff to dust on the shelf or plaques. A lot of the people have stuff that they hang up on the wall they forget about because it's just one of 100 things on the wall. You give something to somebody that is a usable plaque, a usable award, an honor, that and pour your heart into it. Man, I mean, it's great. I have people, I just did an interview where we did some cool gifts, and I haven't talked to the guy in 8 years, but he reached out because he's like, I use that thing every day, and I tell your story. We haven't communicated in 8 years, but he's still out there spreading the Giftology message because of the item that was sent that they use every
What I think is so interesting about what you do, it's like, to me, it's very meta because you're doing something that has a message, but you're also acting on it. I'm going to explain this in a second here. It's taking me a little bit to get to this point, but I encourage people to follow their passion and do what they're passionate about to connect their interest, strengths, and values to a career that they love. Because I do believe that when you like or even love what you do, there's a ripple effect and it touches other people and you make an impact in their lives. And so it sounds like not only do you get to do that with what what your career is, but also your message has this impact and there's a ripple effect and it gets passed on. And it reminds me of, kind of doing a good deed really. And just the impact it can make on others. And I mean, it changes relationships, it changes lives, and it touches people. And I think that's so beautiful that you're able to do that. You're able to wake up every day and do this as your career. What does it feel like?
Yeah, I mean, people ask me how I feel. Like somebody texted me this morning, I'm like, better than I deserve. And I really feel that way. I feel like I'm super blessed, super fortunate. And, it's not that it hasn't been hard or difficult or blood, sweat, and tears, but when I think about all the different people that hate what they do, and I get to basically, I asked my 4-year-old daughter, she's now 8. I said, what do you think Dad does for a living? This is 4 years ago. And she's like, Dad, you help people love on people. And I'm like, man, if a 4-year-old can understand what I do and can see value in it, and I see them being impacted by it and wanting to be givers and be generous, it's pretty cool for it to be able to impact. Because at the end of the day, like you talk to people that are in their 80s and 90s, like they want to be surrounded by people that they love, that with their kids or grandkids or great grandkids. They want to be with their spouse. They want their life to have mattered. And they want to have an impact. And I feel like I'm able to do that. Every single day, I get to help people love on people. I get to inspire people to be more generous. I get to help people thrive in their business and treat their spouse better and treat their 500 employees differently. And so, I mean, really, at the core level, like, I get to love on people and teach other people how to do it, and do it more thoughtfully, more strategically, and more intentionally. But it's not like I invented it. Like I just took an element of it that I saw an opportunity and saw how it impacted me being an introvert and having certain weaknesses, and I kind of built the company around things that I wasn't good at or that I needed help with, and so I didn't realize that all at the time. Like sometimes you're just doing it out of survival of what to do. But over time, in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that's why I did that. Oh, that's why that fell in place. Oh, that's why I've leaned that direction. It's all built around strengths and weaknesses that I've had.
And you talk a lot about how it's reciprocated, how gift giving is reciprocal, right? Someone feels the need to thank you and to sometimes even level up your gift. Well, so what's a gift that's been really meaningful for you that you've received maybe in the past year that you can share?
Yeah. So, something that one of the guys, I have a couple different groups of guys that I call it the Outgive group or the Outgive club. And it's guys like there's John Hall and John Rampton. There's these guys that are like into SEO.
So they have to be named John? Is that the?
Yeah, partly. Yeah, there is another John. Like I have, what's funny? Like, there's like stats that if you live in Johnstown, Georgia, the likelihood of your name being John actually goes up significantly. It's a subconscious, and I do think that there's an element of like you're attracted to people that are like you or that have the same commonalities, and so it is weird. But I have some of my best friends in the world are all named John, but not all of them. But one of the guys, Tom Schaff, who has written books, he's a sales trainer. He owns part of the Field of Dreams, the original Field of Dreams with Robert Redford.
Oh, that's so cool.
We kind of outgive each other. And he gifted me his connection to the Indians. And I'm throwing out the first pitch at the Indians game. tomorrow night, and taking my daughter. I'm actually bringing. I decided I'm a big believer in loving on all of my vendors the same level that most people love on their most important clients. Because even though I spend millions of dollars with them, to me, I don't have a business without vendors. And so I'm taking this production supervisor at Cutco, who I've never met before, but he's on my email list. And so I decided to give away a ticket to the suite to come watch me, and he was like out of his mind. So he's driving down from New York. The president of the college I went to, my business partner, our employees, all these different people will be there for the first pitch, which is kind of crazy. But I've had people do.
That's incredible. It's a priceless gift, the first pitch.
Yeah.
And if you're a baseball lover, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So yeah, I've been fortunate to be on the receiving end, but I mean, it's a core concept for me from a faith perspective. You reap what you sow. And, over 19 years, we've been planting a lot of seeds. Some of them turn into oak trees. Some of them turn into nothing. But I'm not starving. The business has done great. And I've been really fortunate to have, wonderful relationships and be able to do cool things for.
That's such an important point that you're planting a lot of seeds. I think that so many of us, we plant a couple seeds, and if we don't see the return and we don't see, that we applied to these jobs and we don't hear back, we get really discouraged. And I think that the message is you've got to keep going. You've got to keep planting these seeds because
they take a while to grow. They take a while to germinate, and we become self-protective. Like we don't have the abundance mindset of like, hey, like for me, it's a biblical concept of like you plant a seed, you reap what you sow. Like, but it doesn't say that you'll reap it in a day. It doesn't say you'll reap it in a week.
Right.
Like,
the Cubs was 6 years, you said.
Yeah. I mean, I see things that are paying off for me that I planted a seed from a decade ago. And it's hard when you're starting out to not be like, man, this is taking so long and it's taking forever and investing this time and energy and money. And does anybody even care? And, so I mean, I've had all of the doubts. I think if I hadn't looked at Paul, my original mentor, and said, I want to be him when I'm 60, and realized I was 20 at the time, which means I had 40 years of working on things and planting seeds to get there. If I didn't have a mentor or a model of like, and since then I've read books like Give and Take, Adam Grant's great book. There's a lot of books out there that talk about like, hey, this is a long tail play. This is a long-term thing. Relationships don't grow overnight. But early on, I was like, gosh, like I'm buying all these gifts. I'm doing all these things, all these handwritten notes. Does anybody even care? But over time, like I've seen it play out and been fortunate to, sometimes one person who's really bought into you is worth more than 100 people who happen to know you. And that's where I realized like having people that are really in your corner and even focusing on investing in people that are givers. Because if you give to a giver, it's a multiplication effect. If you give to somebody who's a taker, maybe they'll give just to get something from you, but like being strategic about where you're going to invest your time. I'd rather invest in one gift to the right person than invest 10 mediocre gifts to 10 people that don't really matter.
And I want to clarify for our listeners, when John's talking about giver and taker, it's not necessarily tangible giving and taking. It's like, are you connecting with people who are like, I see you and I want to help you and I want to connect you, and they open up your world to more possibilities and potential because they have this abundance mindset, and it's very willing to connect you with their worlds and their connections. It's not, oh, that's a special connection just for me.
Yeah. It's a whole mindset. It's a heart set, and you can't. I mean, as a giver, you still have to be strategic with it. You can't give to everybody. So, of course, but when somebody comes to you and they're hungry and I have young people all the time that reach out and some of them you can tell like they're using the picture brain language. They're not trying to offer value. They're not being creative. And you have somebody else that's like, they're like coming at prepared. They've done their homework. They've read the book. They've done this. They've done 20 different things before they've even met with you or even reached out. That's a different, you're going to respond differently as a giver to somebody who is putting out their A game and putting in the hard work versus somebody who's looking for a handout. And there's a big difference between somebody who's hustling and grinding and willing to do the hard work and somebody who just wants you to do all the stuff for them. And I love helping people, and I know you do too. And I think, but yeah, there's, being willing to put in the reps to be really good at something or to hustle or to work for free. Like people are like, I'm not going to work for free. Like they're too good for that. I'm like, do you realize that person you're working for free, like charges $10,000 an hour? Like you should actually be, there are like different groups out there where they charge you to work for them, and it's still worth it. I mean, think about a mastermind. You pay 25 grand, some of these masterminds, to be in the same room with some of these people. If you could go do that for free, like that's a huge value to you. And I mean, so people can be, whether you're young or old, there's a lot of people that are very short-sighted and don't realize what it means to put themselves out there and be around other givers and to add value to a giver.
Yeah. And I think you're defining that time is the currency of today, giving your time and someone giving their time to you, and just how valuable that is. I love what you said about being hungry, being hungry and showing that you're hungry, right? Taking the time to read someone's book and do your research and show that you care and that you're invested and that you're willing to put in the work when you make that first connection. Well, so tell me about the object you brought and how it reflects your passion.
Yeah, well, at a core level, so I brought, this is something I wear every single day.
Okay, and so for those who are listening to the audio, John is showing us a bracelet. Can you describe this bracelet?
Yeah, so it's a white gold bracelet, and I'm not against tattoos, but I'm a farm boy. I always thought about getting like a tattoo. What would I want when I'm 80 years old, kind of a thing. And so for me, my faith, I'm a follower of Jesus. Like that's who I am. That's at a core level. Like my faith is infects everything. And so I'm like, do I get a tattoo of something? Do I get like the barbed wire? Like, what do I get? And so I ended up making a custom piece of jewelry, and it basically is Hebrew. It says Adonai Yeshua, which means Lord and Savior. And so for me, God's the ultimate gift giver. And so like for me, like my faith, it's been able to be woven into everything that I do. And this is a reminder as I travel, from my family, from my kids, from my wife, like what's important to you, who are you really doing this for, and what are you working towards? And so for me, like having a bigger picture, legacy, eternal perspective, and being able to be reminded of myself every time I look down at my wrist was like this was my version of a tattoo. In a way that was meaningful, thoughtful, and maybe someday I will pass down this artifact, to one of my kids or grandkids or whatever else. But for me, it's been something that's super meaningful, and is that like ties into to a 19-year passion.
Yeah, I think that it helps you come back to your why, right? You're looking at that every day, and it tells you, it reminds you, why you're doing that, everything that you do, and your core values, which comes back to passion career, right? Guys, like connecting what you value to what you're doing on a daily basis. And it doesn't have to just be in your job, but just how can you integrate it into how you spend your time? Well, so what career advice do you have for young, hungry professionals today?
Yeah, well, I would say that to me, there's so much digital, there's so much talk, there's so much emails and blogs, and there's nothing wrong with any of that kind of stuff. I think that a lot of what our great grandfathers would have done comes back into vogue because it's not common. So, showing up, with your shoes shined or whatever else, like showing up and sending a handwritten note to every single person, whether you hear back from them at a job or not. For me, like I invest a lot of money in my letterhead, my stationery. Early on though, I had the nicest stationery. Now it's a piece of steel. It costs $9. But I think that you see things pop up on LinkedIn where somebody gets creative to apply for a job, and they, it's a place, they're applying at DeWalt, and they send somebody a toolkit, and they talk about they labeled the screwdriver and and it goes viral. And so what I'd say is that leverage, doing one thing really well, or applying for one job really well versus just applying for 50 jobs. And, taking the time to put in the creativity and the, going the extra mile in the research and doing something if you can. I think because everything's so digital, a toolbox showing up or a sheet of $9 letterhead that's a handwritten note shows that you're different. Everybody says they're different, but it's hard to tell from a resume or from something that's digital. Are you really different? Are you really creative? Are you really like a type of person that's going to take charge and do things that are different and go the extra mile? I mean, at the end of the day, like most businesses are hiring based upon attitude. Do they have the soft skills, the interpersonal skills? They can train all the other stuff. And so they want to hire somebody that they trust from a like emotional intelligence. And that's hard to convey in a forced interview or an application or whatever else. And so I would say, for me, like I apply this every single day. Like we send crazy stuff to people, and sometimes it lands and sometimes it doesn't. And what I found is that if the creative, who you really are, doesn't land with the company, they're actually probably doing you a service by saying no, because you're actually probably going to be miserable there if you can't be fun and creative or different or unique or whatever else. Like the hotel companies that are doing really well are like Kimpton, because they hire people and let them be themselves. Southwest Airlines, great example. They hire creative, fun, unique, friendly people. They don't train people to be friendly. They hire friendly people.
Yeah,
So,
you get on the flight and you're like, is there a comedian on like the speaker?
They're awesome.
Like they're hilarious.
They're awesome. And I mean, I fly a lot of Southwest. So what I'd say is, do a handful of things really well. Figure out ways that you can be different. It's not about spending the most money, but it is about, like people make fun of my $9 letterhead, and I'm like, you'll spend, $100 on, whatever, bar tab, and that doesn't get you anything. I'll spend $9 on a couple handwritten notes that people never forget. And so I would say go all in on the little details that people think don't matter.
Yeah. And I love that too, like showing your creativity in your application, putting that time in, because that's showing how you're going to show up for when you do work for them. And that speaks volumes if they can get a slice of that when you're applying, and just the way you're communicating and the handwritten note. So, I took some notes while we were talking here, and I want to leave everyone with a couple of tips from you, and things that every listener, that's right, you guys right now, you can do today. So I want to encourage you to think of one person that has been a mentor to you, that has opened doors for you, that has helped you, that has looked at your resume, given you their time, right? Because time is so precious. I want you to think about that person and write a handwritten note. You can do this today. And it's so easy. Do it. See how it makes you feel just to write that handwritten note, and just wait for the response when you give it, because there will be a response. And if you want to take it and you want to level it up, I want you to take John's advice and make something an artifact. So really think about that person and make it functional, that functional artifact, right? Like the mugs. Doesn't have to be $1,000 mug, okay?
Nope.
It just has to show that you put that thought in there, in that creativity. And I think that by putting in that effort and taking John's advice here on how you see gifts as a way to show your gratitude, as a way to show your love, as a way to, communicate your gratitude for people that give you their time, that's going to reward you in ways that you can't even imagine, and you're going to be remembered. And that's everything. That's how you open doors. That's how you make the connections, and that's how you make an impression. And that's, people want to work with those kinds of people. People want to connect you with those kinds of people.
Yep. All day long.
So I hope I got that right, John. Did I get it right?
You're spot on.
Okay.
And take the time to write, don't write it in 3 minutes. Take 30 minutes and write it. Make it heartfelt, make it honest, make it true. Think about, be specific. It's one thing, you're awesome. You're awesome because of this, this, and this. You're amazing. I'm so appreciative. I'm forever grateful because of this, this, and this. Don't make it like 3 lines on a note card that you could send to anybody. Make it specific as possible to the relationship of who you see them to be and what they've meant to you personally.
Yeah. And if you're totally clueless on writing a thank you note, we seriously have an article in College Magazine on writing the thank you note to like professors and mentors. I mean, think of all those professors that gave you letters of recommendation for study abroad or for jobs or references. They deserve that thank you note. And we outline it for how you can do it. Well, so please take the time to do that today. Don't let another minute go by without putting in that effort to write the handwritten note. I know for me, I write them first before I actually put it on the stationery, because I need that time to like think it out and make sure it's exact. I'm a little perfectionist-y about that. But I think that, when you say put in 30 minutes, that shows. When you read a card that someone's put the time into, you can tell as the reader, as the receiver of that note, that person put a lot of thought and time into it.
Amen.
And it's priceless.
Yep. So most will be kept. I keep mine. I keep anyone that's really heartfelt sent to me for sure.
Oh, totally. I have letters from like years ago that I keep in a box, a memento box. Well, John, thank you so much for being on the show. Everyone, thank you so much for listening in today. I'm so excited to be here to help you on your intentional career journey. Please reach out if you have any questions. You can reach me at Amanda@findyourpassioncareer.com. And be sure to stay in touch and keep listening and tell me about your career journey and ask any questions that you have, because I want to help you and I want to help see that you are connecting your interests, strengths, and values to your career for meaningful work that has a ripple effect, just like what John is doing in his work. So thank you again, John. This was awesome. It was so great to see you.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks, Amanda.
All right. Bye, everyone. And remember, when you speak your passion, doors open. Bye.